You good? Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the April 27th, 2017 meeting of the North Andover School Committee to order. First order of business is say the Pledge of Allegiance, so I would welcome people to rise and do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Just for everyone's notification, tonight's meeting is being recorded, and I would ask everyone to please silence their mobile devices if they have any on them. First order of business is public comment. Anyone in the audience for public comment to start the meeting? There'll be a chance later on as well. So, okay.
Well,
Sure, come on up. Please state your name and your address, please, for the record.
Sam Warren at Edgewood,
75
Osgood Street, apartment 3303. I taught at Phillips Academy for 30 years. I've left, as I don't know that I hit everybody, copy sort of a very brief blurb to give some idea of the kind of work I like to do. I'm 82, so I'm not a spring chicken. But I have worked with, well, just this afternoon, I had two kids who were 7th and 8th graders.
Okay.
And I pass out, you've got my two books.
I do, thank you.
Which I've written for elementary school teachers and students alike, because I know that there are, when you get a class of 25 or 35 students, that it's very hard to get the very fast and the very slow going. Frequently, the very slow are given support by having special teachers, but the very fast sort of spin their wheels. And my books are aimed at, well, 7th and 8th grade calculus is what I'm talking about.
7th and 8th grade calculus?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I could give it to you, too. Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience for public comment tonight? All right, seeing none. Moving on to recognition. First order of business is North Andover Athletic Association. I know Mr. Young's here if you want to come forth and do your thing.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me tonight. I've got three different things. I'll try to follow your order and do
Sure.
NAAA first. We want to kind of just share with you guys what the NAAA is all about and publicly thank them for all their work. The North Andover Athletic Association's mission is to support and enhance athletics as well as athletes' experience at North Andover High. The NAAA is comprised of volunteers who assist in the North Andover High School athletic department, primarily through fundraising. New members are always welcome. In short, the NAAA allows our coaches to not worry about having the nice things that make our programs look good and just focus on working with our kids and creating good experiences. Over the last couple of years, the NAAA has contributed to the championship banners in the gym, the stadium landscaping. They provide the senior awards and the flowers for senior nights. They also share the sponsoring of the scholarship for the Byron Award, which is our Scholar Athlete Award. The Hall of Fame also funds half of that. And they buy things like windscreens, shooting machines, signage to make our facilities to be more like home. They share the costs with the athletic department and some other organizations in town in the big ticket items, like when we replace wrestling mats and cheerleading mats, things to that nature. They run 2 fundraisers annually, the Nights on the Run, which most of our people know about, as well as a comedy night in March. And mostly we're looking for new volunteers. It's a great opportunity for guys that graduate out of the booster program and are looking to still stay involved with kids in sports to stay involved. We meet the second Tuesday of each month in the library at the high school, and we'd love to have new members. But I wanted to personally publicly thank the NAAA for their work. All right, enough of that. Athletically, again, as you guys know, extracurriculars and educational athletics are a big part of the experience at the high school. It's a big part of being in this town itself. Without the school committee support, the community support, and of course our student athletes, our programs couldn't be what they are. I gave everybody a little packet that summarizes the winter season that we had. During the winter, 478 kids participated. That's like more than a third of our student population in athletics. When you look at extracurriculars, music, and athletics combined, 74% of our kids are continuing to learn after 2:15 every day. So I wanted to just throw that out there to you guys as you go through your budgets and things like that, and remember that our kids are working all day long and our faculty as well. A few highlights before we do the student recognitions. Athletically, this winter was a historical year. We were league champs in boys basketball, boys track, and girls skiing, which is just a huge accomplishment for our school. If you remember, 5 years ago, we went to the Merrimack Valley Conference. Everybody said we couldn't compete. We can compete, and we win. We had a 61.9% winning percentage. And we share with our coaches and our parents during preseason that that's nice, but they spend more time, our coaches do, with kids on buses, waiting for mom or dad to pick them up, sitting around after practice and working with kids and growing as people than they do teaching their sports. And that's a big part of that experience at the high school. Other highlights, 11 of 12 winter teams qualified for postseason. The track team was the state relay Division II champions, back-to-back. There might be another back there somewhere. The girls ski team, the seniors on that team were undefeated for 4 straight years in regular season racing. They were the 4-time interscholastic champs of the North Shore Ski League, and this year they were the state runners-up, at the state championships. The other big news item from the winter was that our wrestling team, while undersized in numbers, ended up being the Division II state champs. Huge accomplishment for those guys, and they worked hard, and girls. They worked hard to attain that. We're also going to recognize tonight, from the extracurricular side, our Relay for Life. I got to read a little bit. The Relay for Life is the biggest fundraiser the American Cancer Society puts on. This year, North Andover hosted its second Relay for Life, completely student-run. We had supervision, but we didn't do any organizing or managing of the event. It was led by students Molly Dalton, Erin Chesleski, Grace Ford. During the event, the kids raised $48,000. The night of the event, they walk our indoor track, they hear cancer survivors speak, they play games, and obviously they come together for a great cause. So tonight we'll be honoring those girls as well for their work. At this time, we have certificates that you guys graciously supplied. I don't know the best way to present them. Mr. Terci, would you like to?
I think they're in order. If you want to just read them off, they can come up. Sure.
Okay, are you going to?
Sure, absolutely. Sure.
Joey Valentino, Wrestling All Conference.
Not independent. There's no way you're all here because I signed a lot of them.
Jack Perry, Wrestling All Conference. CJ Sincata is being recognized for Wrestling All Conference. He's not here. Ethan Ford, also Wrestling All Conference. Coach CJ Sincata. He was the Massachusetts Coach of the Year.
That's great.
Jack, as the captain of the team, we'd like you to come up and be honored again for being Division II state champs. The boys basketball team, all conference, Jake McElroy.
Congratulations. Thank you.
From the boys basketball team, being recognized as the Merrimack Valley Conference Player of the Year, as well as all conference, Connor Rogers. He's not here. From the boys basketball team, being recognized as the MVC Coach of the Year, Coach Paul Tangles. Jake, if you'd come back up and accept the award for being the Merrimack Valley Conference champions.
Great.
From the girls basketball team, Faith Connors, all conference. Also, all conference from the girls' basketball team, Emily Siflin, who's over at the lacrosse team. From the cheerleading team, all conference, Carolyn Boyle.
Thank you.
From the boys' ski team, North Shore League's all-star, John Cooperstein. Also from the girls' ski team, Maria Cavallaro, North Shore All-Star. Yes. Her twin sister Rachel Cavallaro, also North Shore League All-Star. Emma Calamaro from the girls' ski team, North Shore All-Star. From the girls' ski team, Cam Deary, North Shore All-Star. From the girls' ski team, our coach, who was the Boston Globe Coach of the Year, Jerry Marchigiani. We're also recognizing Maria Cavallaro tonight as being a Boston Globe All-Scholastic. And we have our recognition for the team for being the state runners-up and the league champs. Jerry, if you'll come up and accept that on behalf of the team. Indoor track, all conference, Matt Antega. Indoor track, all conference, Steven Stabile. Indoor track, all conference, Tyler Glendon. Indoor track, all conference, Trevor Nasser. Indoor track, all conference, Eric Duffy. He's not here tonight, but indoor track coach of the year, Steve Nugent. Our track guys to come up and accept the award for being Division II state relay champs. Why don't you all come up, please?
There you go, guys. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
From boys hockey, Nolan Hines, all conference. Also from boys hockey, Matt Lucy was all conference. From girls hockey, Jess Chico, all conference. Getting close to the bottom.
Great, which is great.
From boys swim, Dylan Walsh was all conference. We'd like to recognize our Relay for Life, Molly Dalton, who I believe is at.
Thank you for doing that. It's great.
Grace Ford. And I believe Erin is in California, correct? Yes. Erin is in California with the DECA kids. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to all the athletes. I think obviously a lot of great lessons to learn, no matter what sport you play, but you make us all very proud. Town has a great tradition of athletics in this town, so we're very proud to recognize all of you. So thank you for coming out, and believe me, you do not need to stay for the rest of the meeting. You may clear out.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Stan, you can stay.
I have this cool thing that says I have my own seat with my own name.
Yes, that was all Mr. Gilligan's idea. I assure you of that. Okay, that was nice. A lot of great awards there. Okay. Okay, she's back there. I almost was like, why bother? Courtney, student report, come on up.
Who?
Who?
Oh, yeah.
This kid's got 1,000. He's like Ferris Bueller. He's got 1,000 excuses.
Yeah. So junior prom, as Cole is getting his text ready for, is this Saturday. A few other things that are coming up. Oh, DECA's happening right now, and it's going to happen through the middle of next week. A few things that happened before vacation was the cultural dinner night hosted by the Asian Culture Club. It was very successful. We probably sold double the tickets we thought we were going to sell. Yeah. And we had dragon dance performances, magic trick performances, and guitar performances, and it was really great. The Pre-Health Club ran a drive where we had people donate to homeless women feminine hygiene products, and we donated all that to Rosie's Place over vacation. The Environmental Club has also done a campus cleanup where we went around the campus and picked up the trash along the driveways and around those areas. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. So we're going to see you one more time?
Is there one more school committee meeting?
May 4th?
All right, I'll be there.
Okay. That's it, right? That's the last? Before graduation? Well, one's during town meeting, and then, oh yeah, we'll
Okay.
we'll another one.
All right, I'll try to get. Okay, I'll try to bring Cole next time. All right.
You say that all the
Yep.
time.
Thank
Courtney,
you so
thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay, moving on to consent agenda, approval of minutes. Has everyone had time to review the minutes from the April 6th meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes as written from the April 6th meeting.
Motion by Ms. Mably, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's a 5-0 vote. Can we make a note, Madam Superintendent, that we need to send a copy of these minutes to Crest for their records to show that we appointed Ms. Picard as the representative? So make sure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Mrs. Zagari is already on top of that, but I just want to.
Yes.
I got an email from the Crest folks saying we had to send these minutes over to
We will do
say
so.
that she was duly appointed at such time and at such a date. So, okay. No chair's report tonight, so we'll move right to superintendent's report.
Yeah, first is, as you guys know, you approved the calendar, and then once you've approved the calendar, we move on to do the half-days, the early release days, not the half-days. So I just wanted to have you know that we're basically keeping them to Wednesdays. We're trying to do every other week. There's a few glitches on that, so let me be very specific on the every other week. Specifically in September, we did the 13th and we did the 20th because that is actually Rosh Hashanah. So we're trying to be respectful of Rosh Hashanah. Other than that, it's pretty much every other week on the Wednesday. So hopefully that'll be clear for parents. And that's all we really have done. So just wanted to show that to you.
So we already voted on this. We don't need
Yep,
to
but
vote
I
on
just-
that.
The half days itself was,
Yeah.
I mean, early release days, I mean.
Any questions regarding that?
I just have a comment. Can we make sure that this is very easily found on the website? I get, out of everything that I get questions on, like, where's the calendar is probably number one.
Number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we will, we'll make sure it gets out. I might even
Okay.
attach it to my newsletter that goes out May 1st, so.
Okay.
Well, actually, in that vein, I've had several people ask me, are we at the official, what is the official
Well,
last day of
that's my
school
next
this year? Oh, really? Good.
So, there, you set me up there, Miss
I
Mably.
tried.
So,
That's why she's vice chair.
I just
Put an
want to
arrow.
announce, I feel like it is safe to announce then there will be no more snow. That I feel that it's safe to announce that the last day of school is going to be Friday, June 23rd. It is a Friday, which I was very cognizant of during the last few potential snowstorms that we not go to a Monday. And just to remind everyone, it is a half day
Okay.
on the last day of school. So Friday, June 23rd is the last day of school. Just to officially announce that it is a half day. Okay?
Excellent. Can I take a break and text like 90 people?
Yeah, I'll put something in my newsletter too. And then just one other thing I have, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Straight to talk a little bit about our social emotional director search. Just letting you know that there is currently a committee doing the assistant principal search at the high school. As you remember, we have 2 assistant principal openings. Mr. Jackson is leading that, along with Ms. Wahlberg is supporting him, and a number of teachers, a student, and we should have our goal is to have something done mid-May. So I'll be back in touch with you, but just want to let you know, once the principal search was completed, we quickly moved on to the assistant principal search. And we are doing the assistant principal search, and the next search that is going to start, which Mr. Gilligan is going to co-chair with Mr. Jackson, is the athletic director search. That job has been posted, but we wanted to stagger them so that we weren't doing them all at once.
Sounds good.
And then, Dr. Straight, can you let folks know about our new Director of Social Emotional Learning and the process we used to get there?
Certainly. So we had quite an extensive committee. Actually, it was a large committee that was comprised of principals, system principal, guidance counselors, general education teachers, some student services staff, and a parent as well. And we went through, we had over 20 applicants, and we went through and interviewed 6 different people that were the most qualified for the position for what we had defined it to be. Ended up having 2 finalists. Each finalist came to spend a day. They went and visited a number of the schools, sat with children and chatted with children, so we were able to get some of the students' input as well. And ultimately, we ended up deciding who we thought would be the best person. So we ended up picking Nikki Murphy. Ms. Murphy is actually working currently in another school district as a social emotional director, so she had a lot of applicable experience that we were really happy that we could apply right away, and she could hit the ground running for us. And we're hoping that she'll have the opportunity to come in and meet some of the principals and the staff and really kind of get a good handle on what her responsibilities are going to be. So when she starts in the summertime, she'll be able to really hit the ground running and start really investigating the types of things that we need. Just as a reminder, the need for this position really centers on the fact that about 48% of our out-of-district students center on the social emotional needs of our students, and we really are looking at improving that capacity within our schools. We have some terrific things in place, and we just want to really ensure that we're meeting the needs of everybody and keeping our kids here in North Andover. So we want to welcome Ms. Murphy, and we're looking forward to really working with her.
Great. She'll start July 1st.
Yes, July 1st is her start date.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay, great. Next order of business is the public hearing for school choice for 2017-2018 school year. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing on this? Okay. Motion by Ms. Picard, second by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Okay. Do you want to give a little background on that first, or no? Nothing at all. Okay, good.
Is there anyone here from the public?
I know that. So every year we have to do this, whether or not North End will participate in school choice, and this is by law we have to have a public hearing on it. So this is the public hearing. All right, seeing none.
Is there a time limit attached to the public hearing? No.
No, just gotta
Very good.
duly posted, and that's what it is. So
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing. Can we do that?
just for the record, we're not going to vote on this. We're going to vote on it next time, but
We have our first reading about it later,
later on to.
and then I will vote the next time.
We'll vote the next time, correct, that's all right. Okay. So, motion by Ms. Mabley to close the public hearing, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye. Aye as well. Okay, 5-0 vote on the public hearing. Very efficient committee we have here. Under old business, second reading and a vote to support mathematics curriculum resource. Mr. Gilligan and I think Kara's going to come out.
Come on up, Ms. Laco. So we had a pretty extensive presentation last time. I think I went over my allotted time, actually.
Par for the course.
Just a couple of things that extra that I wanted to add tonight is we talked a little bit about parent perspective last time, and we had some more information that we had gathered when we met with the teachers in January around parent perspective. So I had just created just a few quotes tonight. I have 5 or 6 here. I'm only going to read 2. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Larkin because I would like her to talk a little bit about the work we did yesterday with all the special education inclusion teachers in the district, as well as all the general education elementary teachers around Eureka Math. So.
One
Good.
on Jim. I
Jim
don't
doesn't have one. All right, there you go.
We're good.
We want to make sure we take care of Mr. Mealy. So, you know, we had some perspectives last time from students, we had perspectives from teachers, and we had talked about some of the perspectives from parents, and particularly not just about Eureka, but when we talked about Go Math and Eureka. More recently, some of the parents and teachers are excited because if they had Go Math this year, we realized there might be some gaps next year, and we talked about that. And we realized we have to pick up on that. And, you know, just gathering a little more data from the parents, or perspectives anyway. If you look at the first one, I love the Eureka Math program because of the heavy emphasis it puts on explaining why when students are learning and new concepts. Students' strong understanding of why gives them the confidence to attempt new, more difficult problems and the skills to get the new and challenging problems correct. I think that person probably liked math growing up. And, you know, down the bottom, it was interesting, too, because we got one that said, you know, I'm not a math person and never have been. I'm glad she likes math and gets excited because I never did as a child. And I talked to a parent, someone I talked to today in person, a parent of a student out at Sargent School, and she told me that she really liked it and noticed that it's great because it makes them think more and use higher order thinking skills. You know, so those are some of the sentiments that we have in addition to, you know, the pieces that we brought last time. One of the things we did yesterday, like I said, we had the professional development around Eureka, and we're very hopeful that anyone who's watching at home gets out to make sure you get out for the town meeting. There's important school pieces on there. But we met yesterday with the folks, and I'm going to have Kara talk a little bit about that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what's up on the screen as well.
So we had a great 2-hour session with, as Mr. Gilligan said, all of the elementary classroom teachers and inclusion, and also our reading teachers were there as well. Wanted to give them just a little bit of information before going out into the summer with what Eureka might entail, kind of our implementation plan, what PD they're going to receive. A lot of them were really anxious and excited that they'll hopefully get the materials before they leave for this school year, provided tonight goes successfully well. And the budget process goes well so that they can get their hands on them. But one of the activities that we did was really kind of pose to them, our goal is to create a challenging and rigorous math curriculum. Pose to them, what does that mean? What does that look like if we do have a challenging and rigorous curriculum? So you can see up on the screen there was a poll, and these were the results from the poll. So it's a word cloud. The words that come up most frequently as teachers typed in their responses are largest. And you can see some, again, the biggest one was challenging, right? What does rigorous mean to them? Challenging. And you can see from the quotes that this students are really getting that challenge no matter what level they're at. Engaging, consistent was one piece, and a lot of conversations came after that as teachers worked in some breakout groups around what will be consistent amongst them. We said it's not that everybody is going to be the exact same. We're not saying, you know, you need to do the exact same lesson on the exact same day, but that there is consistency that throughout the year the scope and sequence is the same for teachers, and that they're following that and reaching the same points for all students, no matter which teacher they have, but putting their own personal twist on it so that their personality shines through and they build up that excitement with students. So we had some really good responses there. A couple quotes. We did a survey at the end of the session, and one of the questions we asked is, what are you most excited about? So I want to share a few of those quotes with you. One was that the budget is going to include manipulatives that they need, and that's something as we talked to different districts and different teachers, they said, you know, it's great, but I had to create a lot of my own or kind of tweak lessons because we didn't have that budget for manipulatives. So they're really excited about that perspective, that piece of it. Another teacher said that they're excited about an opportunity to learn some new strategies to teach math to students. And one of the quotes that I started reading and got a little nervous at first, so bear with me, it says, I was not too excited about learning a new math program just because of the long learning curve ahead. And this is a very veteran teacher, has been in our district a number of years, and getting closer to retirement, so I understand her sentiment. She said, but when talking to colleagues who have piloted the program, they had many positive things to say. So I'm motivated to get immersed in the new materials. So I think it speaks volumes to a lot of the conversations. Teachers were grouped by grade level. They were looking into what materials they'll need, which manipulatives they'll need for next year. And they had some really great conversations around that excitement and how it's going so far. And the teachers that have used it this year and last year said, they're really excited for year 2 because they know it's just going to get stronger and keep building that momentum. And the teachers that were new to it said they kind of left the day feeling like, okay, I'm excited, can't wait to get my hands on it and start moving forward. So it was a great day.
That's great.
And I just echo, I think a lot like Lucy Calkins, one of the things is a lot of the teachers who got into Lucy Calkins writing after we were using Right Traits for many years said that really Lucy Calkins reinvigorated their passion around writing, and having almost 30 teachers pilot Eureka this year, there was a lot of that same sentiment. So we're pretty excited about it. And I have to tell you, we've really planned extensively to roll this out right, and teachers kept saying to me the other day, yesterday, Gilly, are you sure it's not one kit that we're going to share across a couple classrooms? And we think back some of those tighter days or some of the times when budget was frozen. This was really an exciting opportunity to put the tools we need for these teachers to navigate these waters so our kids can be challenged and we can have the best success with this program. So we're pretty excited. And we wanted to pass along that additional information tonight.
And we're looking forward to Article 17 of the town meeting being passed, so we have the funds through the Medicaid reimbursement to buy the manipulatives.
With a 2/3 majority.
That's right.
Any further questions from the committee?
I just want a clarification. This is a curriculum resource, not a curriculum change.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I think when you start to read school committee policies from yesteryear, curriculum adoption was really when people would come to the school committee and say, we're going to buy this book and adopt this. We teach to the standards, and we've been working hard with our math committee, mapping out that scope and sequence and those standards. So this is the resource that's going to be the consistent backbone that all teachers have to use as that resource to teach to those standards that the state has lined up with the Massachusetts mathematics frameworks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, at this point, I'd accept a motion to vote to support the implementation of Eureka Mathematics curriculum resource for grade K through 5 students. Anyone?
It's K through 5 with the implementation, and we have a pilot running in the 6th next year. So it could be 6 is fine, but we plan on running that with Joan McQuaid in the 6th grade next year.
Why don't you amend the motion just so then, to K through 6?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to support the, moving forward with the Eureka Math K through 6.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Ms. Mably, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Thank you, Ms. Lockholm. Appreciate it.
Exciting.
Thank you. It's really exciting. And Ms. Lockham, you don't have to stay either.
Okay, next item of business is FY17 budget stats report. Mr. Mealy?
So not surprisingly, it really hasn't changed since the last budget status report. This is the time of year when we begin to kind of get ready to close out. So we'll start closing out POs, moving that money so it's available for whatever else we might need. But that's where we are. It hasn't changed since our last report.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on this? Okay, seeing
question.
none. Do you have a question? No?
Nope.
Okay, no vote required. Thank you, Mr. Mealy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, new business. I'm going to let Vice Chair Mably take over at this point. She's been diligently working with our town attorney. Ms. Egan, come up and join us. That'd be great. And I think this is a first reading for all these different policies that I know you've been
Yes.
working on.
Yes.
So this is the time for just discussion and maybe go one by one and just see what the questions
Review
are.
them,
Sure,
right. So
absolutely.
just for a little background, when I first started last year and got assigned to be the policy person, I talked to Bev, who said there are a couple of things that have come through the Mass Association of School Committees that we need to look at and adopt and change, but we need to hire our new counsel first. So we didn't do anything in the fall
So we did
because
that.
we were waiting for Ms. Egan, which was great. And so now we got together in January and went over all those items and discussed them, and then happily, the person with the knowledge of this kind of language took care of rewriting them, which was Suzanne. So she did that, and we looked them over, and then we wanted to wait for our new committee members to join, and so that brings us here today, and that's why there are so many, because they've been backlogging for a little over a year, I think. There are several you'll see that are, the reason why they're changed is usually that the Mass Association of School Committees has come up with some addendums to the policy or some changes, and then we look at if we want to adopt that into our book, if you will. And so if we can take these one at a time, and then you'll see one of them is new, and we'll get to that, and then we have one at the end that we'll want to talk over, which is about the Educator Hall of Fame. So, do you want to just start with number?
Sure.
Roman numeral lowercase I. I don't even know what you call that.
EBC emergency plans?
Mm-hmm. So, the way it was in existence is the regular black, and then the green part is are the proposed changes. Do we need to read it, or can we just, does anybody have any?
Note what the changes are for the people who.
Okay. So the main change here is spelling out basically emergency services to be police, fire, and emergency personnel, rather than it used to say emergency medical services agencies. Mm-hmm. And then this is really, you see later on, talks about the superintendent will annually review the process and the sequence, and basically be in conversation with our police and fire to make sure that our emergency plans are understood by all and being followed. And we did that this year, I think, with the whole Alice rollout. So Dr. Price has certainly done that.
We're also required as part of our memorandum of understanding with the police and fire to meet with them through the district attorney, so this just reinforces that.
So those are the changes there.
So the goal would be next week we'll have this without the green line or red line, and it'll just be the whole policy, and we'll vote at that time. Is that correct? Yeah.
I would
Yes.
need guidance on that.
Okay.
That's
So,
correct.
so
Okay.
I would say as we go through these policies, if people have concerns,
Or any tweaks to language, whatever, now would be the time, or is that right?
this would be the time.
Okay.
Correct. So
Were
this is
there
very
any-
simple.
Any tweaks to this from what you all saw reading on your screens? Okay.
Great.
Very good. Thank you. So this one is a new policy. So this was new to the state that we then saw and looked at, and so we need to adopt it into our policies. So this is about the security cameras in schools. We currently don't have any policy about security cameras in schools. I looked at these so long ago, I can't remember.
I can jump in.
Thank you. That'd be
Anytime you want.
Oh, I didn't know what I have to, what I'm supposed to do, so.
I'm all set to go through them if you want me to.
That would be great, Suzanne, thank you.
What fun one.
There you go. So the security cameras in schools, so the schools right now have cameras in them, and the Mass Association of School Committees has recommended a policy, which is the one that has been presented to you. Now, the school committee has also adopted a policy regarding cameras in the school buses, and within that policy, and that's been attached to your agenda with a link.
Jim, it's actually a link at the bottom of this one.
It's that
It's not
EEAF.
in your
There you
packet,
go.
but it's a link.
Right there.
We linked it. This is our only previous security camera policy.
Right. So I looked at it, and they are different, and their main difference is the viewing process. So in the one that the MASC proposes, or they provide for you, it delegates it to the superintendent to come up with the policies and procedures to view any recordings that come through those security cameras. And in the one that the school department has, or the school committee has adopted for the bus safety, that goes through a sort of an elaborate process of how you're able to review any recordings. And that's a written request, a written response. Only particular people are allowed to view it, and it's viewed with 2 other members of school personnel people, administrators, and so there's always 2 people at one time who are able to view it. And so what we can do in this instance is take that, I've spoken with Dr. Price about this, and take that policy about reviewing those recordings and add them onto our school building, our security cameras in the schools, to combine them so that we have that process as a policy in place. And then, which is always important, if somebody says,
I'd like to view those recordings, and we can just say, well, we have this policy right here, and this is how you go about doing that.
So, I was going to say, so this bus safety policy that's on the books right now, in our, that's a little more strict than this one. Is that a fair way of saying, or is it more? How would you describe it?
I would describe it as very prescriptive as to what has to happen in order to view the recordings. It's a very spelled out process, and it's very protective of who can view and who can't view and how you go about being able to view the recordings.
And how would you describe the timeliness of that? Like, it seems like it's in more detail. If something happened on a bus and we needed to look at it, could we look at it right away?
Could we,
Not
as
we,
internally?
not me. No, I meant the super. I meant the
Oh
school
yes,
stuff.
so it's not for administration. It's not for the school administration. The policy
Okay.
for their viewing
Okay.
it is for somebody. If a parent says, "Well, I heard something happen in the school bus today, and I'd like to view the recording."
Okay, that
And then
makes more
how
sense.
do you go through doing that? Or the
Okay.
newspaper says, "I'd like to. I heard something happen. How do I go and view the recording?"
So this is a huge amount of experience with this in my previous life. And, one of the challenges is, you discipline a kid based on something that you saw on the video, and parents I want a copy of that, I want a digital copy of that. You get very anxious about providing a digital copy of, say, a fight, because there's other kids involved in that fight. The policy that we put in Newton was that you could come in and view it, but you couldn't actually have the digital copy of it because it was other students' information. There's also an issue about if it is a criminal offense, do you have the right, and in here it says that we can turn it over to law enforcement with my permission. Newton was actually much stricter about that. They had to have a court order. I think that was a bit much. But one of the challenges is often in these situations it's quite tense, and without kind of the rules and regs, assistant principals and principals can get in very tricky places with parents who, you can't suspend my kid without me seeing that video. I need a copy, and then it ends up on Snapchat. So I would prefer that we were a little bit more prescriptive around having access beyond the school personnel.
And that exists currently with the bus.
Yes.
And the bus, yes. So we have that sort of process in place right now with our school bus. And it also, in terms of consistency and how video recordings and photographs are going to be handled, it makes sense to be consistent across the board, I think. School bus and the buildings.
I remember voting on this probably, I'm sure it's down there, 3 years ago. I didn't think that cameras were rolling all the time on our buses.
On the buses, they are.
They are. Okay then.
And to a certain extent, even if you don't have cameras on the buses and they're not recording at the moment, it's good to have a policy in place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Sometimes you're going to have a camera and you want to have that policy in place because at the time you have the camera, you don't know what's going to occur and who's going to be asking for a copy of that recorded.
So in that subject to the public records law, I assume too?
No, I would say it wouldn't. Well, there would be an exemption to the public records law, right? So there would be a specific exemption to that, and that would be student records.
Student.
Yep.
So what we would do is take this, not exactly the same, but add a little bit of this viewing language to
Yes.
help
Yes.
clarify if that was the committee felt that was okay.
But we're going to maintain a separate.
School bus.
Yes.
Yep.
Good,
We'll maintain
okay.
the separate school bus policy. We're not going to change that at all. But I think it's important to adopt a security camera in school policy because you do have cameras
Yes.
in schools right now. So that's an important thing to have. And then what we can do is we can modify the one that's before you to include the viewing aspects of the school bus security camera policy.
So we'll have another draft in the next few weeks that incorporates all that into this, if that's
Yes.
the will of the board. Is that a general consensus on that? Is it a
Seems
little-
all right. Yeah, I had to look at it super carefully. I didn't know about it.
So my understanding was that the cameras that were at school that were like from the front office to the door so that they could see who was knocking at the door were not recording cameras. They were just viewing cameras, providing a sight line where there wasn't a sight line. Are they recording cameras or are they? Does that question make sense? Yeah.
For the administrative
Those
system.
aren't what we're talking about.
The cameras.
And-
in high
Right,
school
okay, so those are
has-
not what we're talking about, and those do not have recording devices on them. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess this policy will come back in front of us again, we'll take it up then. Thank you, that was helpful.
Okay, and then the next policy that the next couple of policies are regarding substance abuse issues. So it's the drug-free workplace, and it's also, should I take them together? Well, I can take them together because the reason that these policies are before you is because there was a change in the law and a suggestion for the policies that all school systems have substance abuse policies, and that they be published, and that the parents and the students be directed to those policies. And so these are suggested by the MASC, and the only change to the GBEC is the reference to another policy. So they suggested that cross-reference so everybody knows, and that cross-reference is to the policy on teaching about drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. And the change in the language is preventative. We're going to be teaching our policy about preventative and education to the students, and how to make safe choices, and how to grapple with those issues. So that's the IHAMA and GBEC.
Any questions on those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Lynch.
So I noticed when we get to the next one on the drug use by students, we make a distinction for the e-cigarettes. Should we also be teaching about that?
That's a good point. Yes, that is a good point, and we did make a change. You're right, and we made a change to say tobacco and nicotine delivery products. So
Right.
we'll include that in this.
And that came from a resident, a suggestion, which was
Yes.
great.
That's good.
Any further questions?
Not on that one.
Ms. Picard?
So I have a question about the drug-free workplace. It talks about controlled substances here, but we've got this conflict between mass law and federal law with regards to marijuana, and I don't know if that needs to be somehow specifically addressed in this, that controlled substances includes marijuana or doesn't include marijuana, or how that would be addressed. I don't have a good answer for that. I only have the question.
Okay, so marijuana is still a controlled substance under the
Federal law.
Right.
So it would be included in this. And
Okay.
you could call it out if you would like to. I mean, there's nothing that says that you can't call it out. And so if you want to be specific in that, and we can say controlled substance, this includes marijuana, we can add some language to that.
Well, I think it's worth a discussion about, obviously the recreational marijuana law just passed, but medical marijuana has been in the books for well over 4 years now, and obviously we have no idea if any of our employees are using marijuana for medical purposes, and for that matter, if any of our students are either. So I think it's worth talking about further about singling that out, I think.
Yeah, but this goes into, for our faculty, I just want to, there we have a
Yes.
policy within our contract that talks about their use of a controlled substance and whether or not they can actually take even something that they have a prescription for. We've had some issues where we've had to have those conversations with employees, so I would be anxious to make a decision without looking at our personnel
making a
policy.
decision. I think it's worth-
But
worth
we
the
should look at
discussion.
that, because there is some language in there that gives us real guidance about how to handle employee situations.
I wish you would look at that and come back with some recommendation about whether or not we should, call out marijuana specifically.
Okay, because if we sort of dig in, I don't know if you already have dug into this.
Go, yeah.
And read it, and it is really about how employees are treated, and drug abuse, and sort of coming to school under the influence of drugs, and that educational aspect of it. But I can look at that as to whether or not you want me to include marijuana in that.
No, I would
Absolutely,
appreciate
sure.
that.
Absolutely.
And then the other kind of question I have is, for a long time when we were talking about teaching about alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, we use the word other drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, so that we would be acknowledging that alcohol and tobacco are both drugs. So it might have fallen out of favor, or it might be worth it to add that as a clarifying statement. I think it's difficult when we teach about alcohol and drugs, because then students particularly disassociate alcohol as a drug, which is, the most used substance by students.
Okay.
Any other questions on those policies?
Would you like me to include that language, other drug, in there for the next meeting for review?
Well, I think I know personally I would like to dig deeper on some of this stuff, because, I don't want to get on a big subject about the opioid addiction and that crisis going on here, but I do see the future more people using medical marijuana as opposed to opioids. And, this policy, is pretty restrictive. And, there are some children, I'm not saying any of our children, but can get medical marijuana to use for medical purposes. And this, obviously there's consequences under this policy for using marijuana.
But this says the unlawful possession or use. And in Massachusetts, it's
I'm sorry, I'm on to JICH,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I thought we were taking all at the same time, so.
Oh.
The second paragraph would concern me specifically about that. And I want to make sure I'm clear, I'm not promoting that, I'm just saying that that's a reality now in the state, that there are some people that are using marijuana for medical purposes. And if it's just this cut and dry about disciplinary action, I would be concerned that someone who had a legitimate prescription, and obviously, my understanding of the law is you need parental consent as well as two doctors to give you permission, or any child under the age of 18. If they have all those parental consent, doctor consent, who are we to discipline them for that? That's what I would. That's my point of view on it. But okay.
Clearly unlawful is not in that first paragraph, right? So, I mean, as you look at this, it's unlawful for a kid to have alcohol. It's unlawful for them to have a nicotine or tobacco product because they're under the age of 18. It's unlawful for them to have steroids.
It's unlawful for them to have marijuana.
Unless it's for medical purposes.
Yes, and
and
that's
then,
the
but
thing.
also there are controlled substances that potentially might be for medical purposes. So I wonder if we put unlawful in there.
We could do
Maybe
that.
in the second paragraph.
Just a thought.
Yeah, that's one way to skin the cat.
Yep.
Yep.
As additional point, I think it's worth also specifying the controlled substances like your stimulants, your ADHD meds, that they do need to take, that they don't see it as, is this, for the purpose of this for students, is it for student handbook or just like our district
For
handbook?
our handbook, and then we do something
Okay.
different for students.
Okay.
JICH is for students.
Oh, so
Our
this is,
policy
It's
is
in our-
about students.
Right.
okay,
It's not in the student handbook.
Yeah.
okay.
All right. So that's JICD. That was. No, I'm sorry. We're on to J.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Suzanne's still looking at that, or are you done?
No, I think we're all set on that.
Okay.
Are we all set on that one? Yep. So we're going to add unlawful too. Okay. Right. And then, so I think that takes care of our, oh, we have one more.
JLCD.
JLCD. Oh, I'm a paper challenged person, so now I've challenged myself on my papers. I apologize. So this one is also a recommendation from the MASC regarding the use of Narcan by school medical personnel. And so what this does is it authorizes the training and the use of Narcan by the school nurses and the school physicians. And then it further states that if the school district decides at a later date to train non-medical personnel on the use of Narcan, that the school committee shall vote on that.
Currently, the only people who are trained are our school nurses.
Any questions on that one?
I mean, to me, just one thing is, should we decide to look further, I think we would need the input from our school nurses if they feel that anybody else should be trained, and who those people should be.
And this, and I should say, as just for your information, is that what we did prior to working on these policies is that we had the, so the appropriate people within the school department look at them and got their input on that. So the school nurse has looked at this policy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is the facilities construction. This is for the school building committee. And the creation of a school building committee was in the town warrant in 1946. And what has happened since then is there have been all these amendments to the town warrant of the composition of the school building committee, who appoints, who they are, their terms. And what we did is we took the three policies from 46, 94, and 2013 and just made the changes to your policy that reflects
all of that.
All of that.
It used to cross-reference a bunch of things, and
Right.
it was very weedy.
Yep. Okay. So that's what this does. And I think that is, we've run through the educator.
Right, I have that.
I don't have that. I have.
Any other questions before we went on the school building? There was just a couple changes, and I think
It was just to clarify, because the language was ambiguous.
ambiguous about that.
Yes.
So this school building committee, if things go well at town meeting, would be appointed shortly thereafter. So we'll get this. I'd like to have this one definitely teed up for next week to vote on. Any other questions on that one? No? Okay, thank you, Suzanne.
Okay.
And now,
Thank you so much.
yeah, I don't think you need to, this other one might take a little while.
Okay. So at your do you want to consider this at the next school building?
That's next Thursday.
Next Thursday. I think the ones that, and again, I'd like to hear what the temperature of the committee is, but I'm sorry, I'm looking at the top one. I think people feel good about EBC, okay? The ECAF security cameras, you're gonna integrate the bus language into that one. Personally, I'd like to spend a little more time on some of these out tobacco and drug use ones. I think the drug-free work, again, I'm speaking for myself, but the ones that I think I would feel comfortable with bringing next week for a final vote would be EBC, ECAF, GBEC, JLCD, and FB. The other two I'd like to spend a little more time on if the committee's willing to go on that.
So just in an interest of Suzanne's time, which is part of my job,
Yeah.
is if we presented those for, the ones you outlined, Chair Teresi, and then scheduled another time for Suzanne to come back and speak about the other ones. Would that work?
Certainly, yep.
Because I think if it would be okay to have you have to come back twice, so I'd rather kind of, if these are very close, you make the changes, we'll vote on them.
Yeah, I don't think.
You can come back for that conversation.
Okay, so one of the things that I was thinking is that I could try to provide the committee with additional or policies from other school districts that maybe vary on those issues a little bit, just so you can review and see what other people are doing that
Absolutely.
is different than the
And I
NISC.
don't think you need to come back next week.
Okay.
I think the ones I just listed off, EBC, ECAF, GBEC, JLCD, and FB. I think the board feels pretty comfortable with the changes you've made. Is that fair?
Well,
So,
it
okay.
wasn't clear to me if we were going to say specifically mention marijuana or not specifically mention marijuana on the drug-free workplace.
Okay, why don't we hold off on those three then? Okay, let's hold off on those three, the GBC, the IHAMA,
Yep.
and the GICH.
Can you wrap the rest, please?
And
Yeah.
then we can schedule a time where you can provide additional information and come back.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll try to do that.
Yeah,
Try
we don't need to
provide
schedule it
some
now, but if
additional
you can provide
process.
information in the next few weeks, that'll be fine. I don't think this is a, we gotta get this done. The only one that, to me, is really, we need to get done immediately is FB.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely.
Is that fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
Board's okay with that? Thank you, Attorney Egan. Appreciate your time
All right,
tonight.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, so you've got a separate document not stapled in about the NAPS Educator Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I just lost that. Hold on a second. Let me dig it up.
So this is definitely a
When you get to move
draft.
everything around, we lost the stuff.
I have 2 copies, so there you go.
There you go, okay. So the situation here is, there are some changes we're making to the Educator Hall of Fame because we're moving it now to being celebrated in the fall along with the professional teacher status and all that sort of thing. And because last year we came down to the point where it was a little bit unclear who should be reading them, even though we had a policy, there were some questions. I've talked to Mr. McDevitt and I've talked to Mr. Gilligan, and we have a couple of things to propose here. The first part under criteria for recognition is pretty straightforward, and I believe Mr. Gilligan brought this up last time, that interested in expanding, he's heard some people saying interested in expanding beyond just the teachers, but to administrators who have also had great influence on student development, student experiences, and educating our communities, children. So the only changes really under the criteria we have here are adding or administrator or administration that you'll see here. The next couple things are up for discussion. So I'm going to take out of order, we'll talk about it afterward, where it says limited to a maximum of one award per year, except for the first 2 years, go up to 3. We want to talk about that at the end because we're interested in maybe making some amendment to that. But if you look down to the next paragraph that's all underlined and has red in the middle, nomination packets, if any, will be reviewed by a subcommittee. Currently, it's consisting of the vice chair and another member of the school committee. So it's a committee of 2. Making decisions and opinions based on the packets solely. In most cases, except for maybe you, Mr. Teresi, the committee members won't necessarily have ever encountered these people, so they're going solely on what is written. And certainly that can be done, but we also thought that a committee of 2 for something like this would be better served by a larger group of people with more diverse experience. So we're proposing to change it to a 5-person committee, which would still have the vice chair plus another person that is appointed by the vice chair, because I didn't used to say how that was actually decided. But then,
Power grab, Madam Vice Chair.
what?
Seems
It
like
is a power grab. It is, yes. I can't wait to appoint
Drafted that?
someone.
It's like week 1.
Yes.
Wow.
And then we wanted to add 3 more people. We thought having someone from school administration would be useful. Another idea was to also have someone from like BRC or some other kind of committee working with our schools and our population, students and teachers, and then a 5th, which I have XXXX so we can discuss. I know that it's challenging because I don't know how you feel about having teachers comment on past teachers or what have you, but we felt that it would benefit to have more of a substantial committee than just a committee of 2 reading stuff and making a choice. Is that
Comment. That was like, I could hear you already.
I mean, obviously, Mrs. Mabley and I talked a little bit about this, and it was vice chair, I think, twice when we went through this. And, when you sit down with one other person from the committee and then make a recommendation, once you put that person's name out in public, I mean, it's really kind of an awkward place to say, we're going to put 2 people out for selection and voting, and then now we're in the difficult position of not perhaps knowing any of them to have to vote one down, if you will. And we all say, it's an honor to be nominated, but it's also, we have to vote for somebody or against somebody. And so the thought process was really just if we brought other members of the community in who might have a little bit more of a history with some of these people and these educators, that we would just get a different perspective on that. So that was kind of the thought.
I have a thought on the fifth person.
Yes.
So just a little context, one of the things that we're doing this is on the whole making PTS matter. It's a joint effort by the administration and the union. So I wonder if we might have somebody appointed by the union.
By the what?
By the union, the
By the
teachers
union.
union.
By the teachers.
That's
So
a
that it
really
really
nice
does
idea.
feel like it's
That is,
one for the superintendent for the year.
yeah.
Oh,
Mr. Gilligan made
please.
the same, Mr. Gilligan made the same recommendation to me, actually.
All right, never mind.
Wow.
I don't
No,
have
but you
any.
didn't know that, so that's good, that's good.
I smell conspiracy.
So I love the idea of the building respectful communities, being a person, but I'm also cognizant that different committees come and go and we rename things. So I wonder if it would be better to just say a member from the community. And then you'd have more leeway and,
I was concerned about that for the
Yeah.
season.
Such
It was just a placeholder, I think, when I talked to Madam Vice Chair this morning, and that was a placeholder, and that's when we thought of the union.
Or some kind of, again, somebody who's actually somehow involved in our schools, and people involved in the BRC are involved in our schools. So someone who,
Community member at large.
right.
Yeah, I think community member at large would be a better.
Yeah.
And
But-
then you could think about like, oh, well, maybe we get somebody from the BRC, or you could say, for example, the BRC or the Booster Club or.
Right.
For staff, or,
Right, right.
There's lots of.
So, go ahead.
One suggestion I would make is that this committee forms, maybe we can say it forms, sometime in April of every year.
Okay.
And with these people, because this will be obviously after the town elections. And we're going to start awarding this in October, in the
right.
fall anyways. So maybe in April, we can say that the vice chair and her appointee, or his appointee, chooses, or sends notice to the teachers union to request a member.
Okay.
And then yourself, or the vice chair and the other person will figure out who the administrator would be, as well as a member of the public. Because I think you're absolutely right, Ms. Picard, that BRC is here now, but,
Right.
it could be called something
It's
else.
also largely school personnel.
Yeah. So we're saying it's going to be 2 school committee members, basically, a member of the public, an administrator,
And somebody
and
from
a
the
teacher
teacher
union.
Mhm.
So it'll be a five-member committee.
Right.
Okay.
And if you read on, you'll see that we also still, even doing this and a name is put forward, it felt very odd, and I know we went through this last year, to then ask the school committee to cast a vote. So you're voting to agree with the committee, but you don't have any information. So it feels weird to be voting on that. So we were suggesting that this committee is charged with making the selection and presenting that decision to the school committee. And the school committee says, great, thanks, we'll award them in the fall. And not have a vote, because it's not clear what you're voting on.
I think you're probably just affirming what your decision, but I mean, I don't think it's a big deal either way.
Okay. I just think a vote is phony.
Okay.
Well, I mean, remember last year we were like, well, we don't know who the other people were, so.
I know. I remember very
So
well.
that's why I think removing the vote makes sense, personally.
You just feel like there's something else.
I just feel like it is an educator, it's the Educator Hall of Fame. We're naming a classroom after this individual. I think it should be a vote
think
of
it should be a vote?
affirmation.
A vote of support? And under what circumstances would someone vote no? Or is it just to make it more a higher honor by having a vote with it?
It'd only be you.
Maybe suspended me. Maybe, no. Jesus. Mr. McCarthy, I voted for. He gave me a lot of
committee
attention.
puts forward the person, and that's the person, but then the committee takes
Yeah,
a formal vote on it.
The committee could vote on whether or not to put a plaque in this person's name. That could be, because that's a budgetary responsibility to buy a plaque.
That's in the criteria.
We haven't gotten there yet.
I agree
But I'm
with
just
Ms.
trying to
Devitt
think
that
of something
it's just
that-
a vote of affirmation. I think that's all.
Well, can we reword it? It's because if you read the language that I crossed out in the back, it all talks about there has to be at least 4, and that it has to be with an I.
You're the policy person. You can write the new one. Write the new.
I did. And that's what we're talking about. So I guess, and I'm fine to do it because I think it is. I hear your points that you're both making about it. It makes it have more power. But it's all this huge 4 lines about a minimum of 4 votes. Like, at one point, would you ever vote against it?
I agree.
So maybe do a vote to,
It's just a simple vote of
Accept.
affirmation if there's
okay,
some.
vote of,
I actually think, having gone through this in a previous life again, that there are some times when somebody has had a history and there are some things that may not have been revealed as part of the, and I think it actually is important to have it as a
vote?
public vote because
Okay.
there could be something that we are not aware of that would actually taint this.
So maybe it could be called a vote to induct.
Yeah.
Something like that.
okay.
And that's what, to be honest, some people may want to come in and say some nice words
Yeah.
for the induct, before we vote.
But theoretically, we're gonna announce the person, and then the next, at the second one, they would get a chance to come in, and then we vote?
Or you could vote to induct and put it on the agenda that we vote to
Yeah.
induct Mr. Smith,
Exactly.
and that would be ample
All right,
notification.
so we don't need to do a new business, old business
I don't-
format
Right.
for this?
No, just a vote to it, and then we could
Okay.
put it,
I don't think so.
if we meet public meeting law, we have to post it 48
Right.
hours in advance.
And then we post.
But I think it's
the-
important that, the committee convenes, like I said,
Okay.
after the election, sometime in April, pick a date, it could be April
Right.
15th or whatever, and they'll meet for however long, 6 weeks, and get nominations, and
Okay.
I don't think you need to put the specific dates
No,
in
I
there.
wasn't,
I
right.
think it's just important that when this committee is formed, the vice chairman needs to take this seriously, get the committee formed and set out a timeline. That the vice chair will be responsible for making sure this happens.
Right. Well, because there's a little bit of language here in that. If you flip it over, it says the subcommittee shall present its recommendation at a school committee meeting within 60 days of the nomination deadline. But we need to set the nomination deadline because we're moving to the fall. So I didn't know, we're talking about April, but then we're not gonna,
I would do 60 school days, because if you're in the summer, you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
well, that's why I was worrying about
thinking,
April
too.
versus
If
fall.
you do 60 school days, that gives you plenty of time.
Okay. All right. And then I can add the part about then we'll vote to, the school committee would vote. And it has to be a minimum of 4.
It has to be what?
A minimum of 4 yays?
I don't
No.
think so.
Simple majority.
Okay. Well, that's, it used to say a minimum of required 4, so I'm gonna take that out. Okay, simple majority.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a,
But
vote.
you want to strike all this language here, period.
and I'll just rewrite something more
Yeah.
sensible. Okay.
Yeah, why don't,
All right.
you take
That's
another
fine.
crack at this? You've
Good.
done great work on this, by the way. I mean, I think this is,
No, this is
fantastic.
this is good. Okay, vote to induct. That's great. I'll add that. And then talking about the recognition part. So the only thing that's really been added is honorees will be inducted into the Educator Hall of Fame on an annual basis at a ceremony held in the fall. I didn't know if the ceremony had a special name yet now, or
Well, I also think, this is something that I brought to the district, and if we're looking long-term, maybe the next superintendent doesn't agree with my
Right.
PTS ceremony, so I think you just say a ceremony held in the fall.
the way it is.
Just
Okay.
as you're with the BRC committee.
Right. Okay.
I mean, if this is a policy. that
Right. And if it ends up being
lasts
just
for 20
educator.
years or 30
Right.
years.
Next committee can rewrite the rules.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we'll leave it like this. So that language is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we added the part about the classroom most closely associated with that teacher's or administrator's career. We add that. And then the inductees' dates of service to North Andover, the grades, subjects taught as appropriate because the administrator might not have taught subjects. And then the display. So all the rest of that is how it's been.
So the only other thing I would add, now that I'm thinking about if we're gonna put out there in public that the actual agenda would say,
Who won.
vote to induct, for example, Bill Jones, that they have to be notified.
I was just going to say
in
that.
advance of it, because they may not, there may be somebody who says, you know what, I really
Don't want that.
don't wish to be recognized, it's not my purse, and I
Right.
don't wish that.
Right, so we
So-
would, right, so theoretically then, we are telling the person we intend to recognize them, but we have to vote on it first, but we wanted you to
Right.
know we're gonna be voting on it.
This, you've been recommended, we
Right.
anticipate the committee would,
Endorse this.
you know,
Good,
Right.
okay. So notify the person first.
before we put their name in public.
Yeah,
So, you'll take another crack at
Yeah,
kind of cleaning this up for next week?
mhm.
You mentioned something about the maximum and minimum and.
I was gonna go back to that in one
We'll
second,
get
yeah.
there.
Okay.
So back on the front. Under selection process, the first sentence, limited to a maximum, in italics, of 1 award per year, except for the first 2 years during which up to 3 awards are allowed. Obviously, we've passed the first 2 years already.
So we can strike that right away, right?
Well, I thought we could, but I didn't notice it establishes a history if you wanted to leave it, so, because the first 2 years already happened. But there's been some, and I don't know if you want to speak to what you've heard, Mr. Gilligan, or what have you, there's been some comment of people would be interested in maybe on some occasions having more than 1 award winner per year.
So these aren't my thoughts. I've been talking to a lot of the baby boomers and the retirees, and I just saw Arthur Fajetta the other night. He's 85.
Is he a baby boom?
I'm not sure if he qualifies. I think he might be the greatest generation. I sent an email to Miss Mabley this morning, and I tried to put together the thoughts that I've probably heard from about 10 or 11 different retired folks, and this is what they had to say. There are so many greats that we're missing an opportunity to recognize teaching excellence by inducting 1 per year, with such a long history of public schools dating back to the 1800s. Another one was maybe 1 for each of the 3 levels yearly, or maybe a bigger class, and then go back to 1 per year. And then lastly, and it sounds like this has been corrected, they mentioned someone in particular, I won't mention the name, but what about administrators? They may have not had a traditional classroom to teach him, but this person was teaching kids about the values of hard work, respect, goal setting, and life lessons. So those were the 3 common themes that I heard from the retired folks. And I think that one last piece is some of them wanted to nominate colleagues or former workers, but then they said, oh, this is an elementary year, or this is a middle school. They're not sure. They weren't sure. They thought that, because an elementary teacher got it this year, that maybe it's middle school next year.
So they just didn't bother to nominate.
They're not bothered. Yeah, a few of them said
Right.
that I'm not going to bother to nominate someone because.
Well, first of all, those comments indicate that a lot of people take this very seriously. We got to treat this with respect.
Right.
I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I don't want to have a bunch of, but I mean, if you had a maximum of 3 per year, that seems like it would be a fair way of doing it. And I don't think it necessarily has to be elementary, middle school, high school.
Right.
I don't think it necessarily has to be that, but. And maybe the committee, doesn't have a lot of nominees there. Maybe it's just one year.
Well,
Maybe it's 3 another year.
and
Maybe
that's
it's like the Baseball
something-
Hall of Fame doesn't always have.
That's right. That came up was to maybe, and again, there's still the level of we want to keep it as prestigious and important and a special honor. So the idea was maybe every couple of years we have a bigger group. And
Well, again, I mean,
Something like
the
that.
next school committee, let's be honest, they could rewrite the policy again next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this gives people flexibility. Gilly, you know approximately how many educators right now in the Hall of Fame? I mean, it's on for a long time. It's like, what, 10, 12?
It's on our first page. I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh, I think
9.
it's like
Yes,
6.
yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, it's not a big number. But if there's this kind of interest in it, I would say, yeah, let's open it up a little bit. Because what are we, 330 teachers each year approximately?
I think we could very easily do something that says, not more than 3 or, 2
Yeah.
or something like
Right.
that. And then that
it
gives
doesn't
the
mean you have to
committee-
do that many.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest, there are some years that, we get a really good number of applicants, and then there are other years where it's smaller. But I think if people know that, there's possibility for that, we might get.
8 in, yeah.
So my only thought is, just playing this out, if you say not more than 3 and you have 3 people who are nominated and you only choose 2, is that gonna be a little tricky?
No one would know but the
But
committee.
No one will know. Okay.
The nominations are.
No, yeah.
And one last question from the retirees. And for example, some of them were familiar with the Johnson North Andover High School Athletic Hall of Fame, and they said, if you put an application in once, so if someone nominated someone once for the Hall of Fame, for the Athletic Hall of Fame, for
Oh, yeah.
example,
Thank you for
they kept it on file, so that's in
That's a good point.
that in every
You don't have to resubmit every year.
and they only induct every other year, I think. But they did something like every 2 cycles go back to the old file and review those to see if they'd be appropriate candidates.
That's a really good idea.
They did that only because they said sometimes you get a nomination from someone from the 50s or 60s, and then the person who nominated them passes away or
Right,
whatever
right.
the reason. But they keep them on file,
We'll have to establish a veterans committee to address those ones.
or a cold case.
So would you want me to add something like that we can keep the nominations, or?
Yeah, you could write that in there. I mean,
Vice chair shall keep the nomination.
Yeah, in her basement file cabinet. No, okay. All right.
So it could be something in the criteria where, you know, a nominee only needs to be submitted once, and they will be, you know, retained for yearly review, or, you know, something of that nature.
My only comment on that is, and I've just seen it through other awards like Pristash or other things, is sometimes the nomination's good, but it could use a little more oomph or commentary or whatever. So maybe we could say that, and if more comes in to support a candidate in the future, that it would just be added to their file type of thing. Or not.
No, I think it's great. I mean, sometimes I'm sure we have two people that were nominated last year that didn't get selected. So
Right.
you know, they should. I would hope that either they're going to be renominated,
Or we can
just
go
say
back and
that
look at them.
they'll be into the mix this year.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Good. Any other?
No, thank you. That's really important work. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing
Yeah.
so
You're
much with it.
welcome. One last thing is, so how do we get the word out that the nominations are open and that sort of, like, how have
What's
your-
interesting is the retirees
They
who
know
are
about it.
talking about this, they're probably some of the greats that we mentioned, but they have no interest themselves in being in the Hall of Fame.
That's not. Listen, they'll be.
But they might have
proudly,
ideas.
Proudly
I mean, that's what,
nominated.
you know,
They
they-
stated, of course, of course.
No, but
They
how
might have
do they
ideas
know
of how
about
to
it
get
even?
you know, how to get the word out, too.
Right.
On the website.
Just from that? Okay.
And it is
All right.
there, and I think, you know, people know, you know, there are people, and then when somebody, you know, is inducted in, you know.
Right.
It's really surprising the number, and I missed last year's, I was traveling for work, but, you know, a number of people come out to support.
It was
their-
really
their
nice.
colleagues,
Yeah.
and they remember, and they're there to be supportive.
Right.
And it's a little reunion.
Well, it also, if we remember last year, it was Mr. McGravy and several teachers who had submitted, you know, recommendations for and support for our winner, and I think they very much drive the process, it sounds, as well. So they're very aware of this, and maybe what we can do is, once we finalize this, we can just make sure that we announce that it's open and set a deadline. Yeah.
Maybe we should
Okay.
post it like in the newspaper too, for people
Right.
that don't use
Yeah.
the website.
Right, and then
The
we can get
dying
the town
stuff put in
papers.
that
Yeah.
paper,
Okay, great.
The dying trick. Yeah.
So, and that's it. We're good on this. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so hopefully by next week.
Yeah, we can. This is, yeah, not a
Yeah.
problem. Not a problem.
Okay, again, just reiterating what Helen said, thank you, Amy, for taking the
My
bull by the
pleasure.
horn, so to speak, on this one. Okay, first reading, overnight trip, Jackson, Wyoming, Yellowstone National Park.
So this is the second year of this trip to the Teton Mountain School. Just a few things that I want to say. There is one change that we are going to be allowing incoming ninth graders. So that's just so when we think that, because it's in the summer. So I do want to let you know that it's also incoming ninth graders, because how do you define high school students on June 24th, right? So, and it's, Mr. Anderson will be taking 12 students. And, you know, I think everything else is in order here, so I leave it to your review.
So I have a question. My son is registered to go on the trip, so do I have a conflict of interest in voting on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I need to recuse myself and leave the room now?
No, you just abstain from the
I
vote.
think you just abstain. It's
You
not.
just abstain.
it's not-
Okay, all right, I
It's
just-
not really a financial conflict of interest.
No.
It's like-
What? I mean, unless you think spending a lot of money is.
Yes. I did the same thing for the trip to the Dominican.
I did the same for nature's classroom, I
Yeah.
just abstained.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
My one question was, I thought it said more than, I thought it was 15. Yeah, 16 students, but we have a chaperone policy of 12. Are we going to have 2 chaperones?
We are.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm also working on, we may be sending a nurse, so we may have 3. At least, and the nurse may be a chaperone, we're working on that.
Okay.
We have a student who needs a nurse, so.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first reading. We'll vote on that next week. Any other concerns?
It's a very
Some
cool trip.
of us will be voting on this next week. Okay, first reading school choice participation for the 2017-2018 school year.
So as you know, every year we have to vote on this. It is my recommendations and the administration's recommendation that the North Andover School Committee vote not to participate as a receiving district in the school choice program for the 2017-18 school year. I think our conversations about class size make it very clear why I would make that recommendation.
And that's been consistent for.
That has been consistent for many years.
Can I ask a question? Is it possible to do it by level, like we would only accept students at, or that's not?
I don't think so. As a receiving district, you either dedicate yourself as a receiving district.
You can
or
actually
not.
vote by particular grade levels in Massachusetts. So the DESE publishes a list of who are the receiving schools, and they do they list what is available. North Andover has never been participated because we've always been maxed to
Right.
max.
And frankly, our class sizes are quite large at pre-K to 12.
I'm just curious
Yeah,
about.
I learned something new, actually. Thank you, Mr. Gilligan.
I only know because people call and ask all the time.
Right.
And you direct them to me.
Okay, so
And now everyone understands why.
Yes.
any other questions on that? No? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, first reading, FY18 budget reallocation for elementary school classroom teacher. I think the superintendent gave us a little briefing on this 3 weeks ago now, but.
Yeah, and I appreciate that I was able to do that at such short notice, but this is the official first reading. It's no different than I had articulated earlier, but the desire to actually be able to fund another teacher, and that each principal of the 5 elementaries has agreed to give up a portion of their building allocation to be able to fund that. And so you see that there, and then we talked very clearly about where those classes would go. We would be opening up a 5th grade at Atkinson. Would we be opening up a 4th grade at Kittredge? And we would be opening up it's hard to look because it's on the next thing. Well, I'll talk about Franklin in a minute. We would be opening up a 2nd grade and a 4th grade at Thompson.
Oh, that's on the second page.
So we have in the budget for 3. This would allow us to have the 4th. And in terms of Franklin, Mr. Clark is actually having a meeting as we speak, where he's going to reallocate, obviously, that 5th grade teacher to deal with the 3rd and 4th grade issue. But what he's also going to do, and he's talking to parents tonight, is create a multi-age grade 1-2, so that there would actually be, parents will be able to opt out if they do not want to do that, but he's having a meeting tonight to explain a 1-2 class where students from 1st and 2nd grade would be, which allows him to allocate a 1st and 2nd grade teacher to deal with the 3 and the 4. And so from educational purposes, I have to say I had my own child in a multi-grade. It was really a wonderful experience for Elsie, my little one. And then it allows him to have consistently low class sizes across the board at Franklin. So he is having a meeting tonight. We have a letter that's going out to Franklin families tomorrow. And I think the thing that's important for us to know is if any family does not want their kid to participate in either 1st or 2nd grade, and that they will have every right to opt out of it.
It's an opt-out, it's not an opt-in type thing.
No, it's an opt-out.
Okay, and you feel pretty confident all the parents in those grades understand that?
Yeah, and and when class lists go out, if there's an issue, we would.
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
But the reality is, the challenge is he would have to make a decision about 1st or 2nd grade being large, and this way he is able to keep those class sizes low and deal with the bubbles that are occurring in 3rd and 4th grade. Because those classes, as you can see, if we do not add additional classrooms in 3rd and 4th grade, are going to be quite high.
And having that that combo class, that 1st and 2nd class, would that be a 1-year action, or if it's so positive, might it be a multi-year action?
We had a really long conversation about the letter, which I'll send to you as soon as it goes out tomorrow. He wanted to say it will definitely be a 2-year option. And I said, soften that a little bit because we never know what's going to happen next year. I said, but our plan is for it to be a 2-year option. So that the kids could actually loop with the teacher.
Yeah, that's
and he's
what
actually also going to announce who the teacher is, and I think that will allay any concerns about it over at the Franklin.
That's awesome.
So,
very cool.
As we move to having more flexibility with classrooms, this might be something that we use across the district to, if our focus is really reducing class size. So, Mr. Clark's very excited about it. The other elementary school principals are very excited about it. We're excited to give it a shot.
How do the teachers feel?
So he met with the teachers last week. Some teachers were a little anxious about it. I think once he explained and put up the numbers, they really understood why we were doing this. And the teacher who is going to be doing it is very excited and volunteered to do it. It was not like we said, you have to do it.
Right, that's
to be a little challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think, you know, so much of what we're doing is the same goal of getting manageable class sizes, so the teachers understand how this fits in. It's not just a new thing. It's actually to the end of the same goal.
It's a very innovative solution.
Yep.
Kudos to you and Mr. Clark.
It's really Mr. Clark, I have to say.
very cool, very good idea.
Okay, so that's the first reading on that.
Wait,
Any
wait,
further
wait.
questions for the superintendent?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry,
I still have questions on this. So, so you're asking us to vote on this?
Yes.
But it feels like a line item vote for me. Can you help me understand why we would need to vote on this?
So absolutely. Anytime I add a new position to the budget that you did not approve, I need your approval, even if I have the funds to cover it, because I'm adding a new person. And so the way that we do this, and you'll see in the fall, we do the same. If I add a new teaching assistant, even if we have the funds to cover it, when we add a teacher to the bottom line, we want to make sure that the school committee approves that. Because not only is the money, we actually have to take into account benefits, et cetera. I have run this by Mr. Mailer, and he understands what we're doing. So anytime we add an FTE, it has been our policy to come in front of the school committee, say how we're going to pay for it, why we're doing it, so that we aren't all of a sudden the budget gets passed and now the superintendent is just putting in new teaching positions, and you wake up the next day and there's 30 more positions than you had anticipated.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to me.
Mr. Mailer?
Yeah, along those lines, I should have talked this on review, but we should reword it should be that you're approving the addition of the position,
Yeah.
not the transfer of the funds.
So we will.
Thank you. That's
yeah.
also very
Yep.
helpful.
Through the transfer, the addition of the position through the transfer. We'll amend that for next time.
Thank you.
And I won't be here next week, but I would be abstaining anyway, as I have a child who will be in the 4th grade at Kittredge. So, just so you
Okay.
know. So it's up to you four.
All right.
Or 3.
Let's see who's here. Okay. Public comment. Do we have a choice?
You can always say no, right?
Never.
Motion to adjourn.
Stan Lippert, 43 Stonecliff Road. First, I just wanted to echo some comments. Ms. Mabley, I think you and Ms. Inga did a wonderful job on those policies. Some of those are much clearer. I think that's a big help, like the school building committee policy is just what it ought to be. So you've done a great job, and that's
Good.
it's not fun, but it's nice to have her on your team.
Yes,
so
she knows how to say that.
that's a big advantage. I come to you asking for some advice. I'm concerned about town meeting. I'm concerned about the order of the votes, the warrant articles in town meeting, because all the budget stuff is right at the end. You know, there's a lot of activity going on early in that meeting, and there could be very lengthy discussions about that. And I'm concerned that the audience will start to dwindle away after that happens, and I want to make sure that we have the people at town meeting to help support our activities, particularly CIP, as it pertains to the kindergarten. So I'm looking for some advice about what I should be telling people about how to encourage them to, don't be, you're going to have to stick, what do I tell people to make sure that I can encourage them to stick with us and, last long enough to get to the right votes, because it's going to be a while, and the two cannabis discussions may take some time, and that, so I'm just saying.
I can't speak to the Board of Selectmen are obviously responsible for ordering the
Right.
warrant articles, so
Right.
obviously first and foremost that you should take it to them.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think you got to tell people this is really important to not just the kindergarten. It's important to the whole school district.
Right.
About reducing class size. This is not a kindergarten project. This is a class reduction class size reduction plan. So I do think that the town manager is aware of it. Our concerns about this. I know I've mentioned it to him, but. They have their reasons for ordering the article, the warrant that they did. So we'll do our best to get those other articles out of the way quickly. And I still feel very confident and comfortable that we're going to get this thing done. Yes, Ms.
I can say that I participated in a meeting this morning with the PTO presidents from the district, and we talked a lot about how to make sure that people come and stay or come back or what have you. And so there are all kinds of ideas that were shared, and that did involve even tweeting not come back or anything like that, but just say we're currently on article number 7 or just so that people know that if they're not watching the timing of it, not saying what to do, but the timing. So trying to give some creative ideas to make sure people come.
Good idea. Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lippert. Okay, comment from the school board. Ms. Picard, anything tonight?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Over spring break, we had 2 North Andover students from North Andover High School who earned their Eagle Award. And that's a really huge and exciting thing, and they did service work in our town. The 2 names are James Diaz and Francis Hurst. So I'm really, I was really excited about that. I have a junior in high school, and, so I know a couple of these kids.
What did they do? Can you tell what their projects were?
I wish I could. I know that, actually, I probably do know both of them. Frankie Hurst did the sign at Stevens Estate, the trail sign, and I actually got up on a ladder and banged some shingles onto a roof, which I don't get to do every day. That was exciting.
I go there almost every day. So
Every day?
James Diaz did some work at the Trinitarian Church, improving some of the facilities there. I believe. I was not involved in that project. And I'm really looking forward to the Little Mermaid at the middle school next week.
As my kids are as well. Ms. Mably, anything?
I have nothing to share.
You've done a lot of work. I want to thank you again for all the work you've done on those policies.
My pleasure.
And all the things. Ms. Lynch, anything tonight? No? Mr. McDevitt?
So on Saturday morning
Oh, yeah.
from 9:30 to 1 is the 5th grade community service project, which is a basically drop-off of gently used household items, and they are then repurposed to a number of community organizations in the North Andover, Greater Merrimack Valley area. And I have been stockpiling pans and dishes and
Board
lots
games.
of stuff that I hope that somebody else will be able to
Yes.
repurpose. And it is a great day for the 5th grade students to kind of come together and really start to meet some of the others and really start a little bit of that bond that will carry them into the middle school and then beyond. But it is amazing. If you happen to, I'll try to go by and get a picture so maybe you can tweet it, of the amount of things I will say that people donate. And the middle school cafeterias are just full, and the number of trucks that go away from that center is just amazing.
Right.
A couple things. First,
He's back.
I see. I've learned not to make eye contact. Go ahead, Ms. Lippert.
I just wanted, my other responsibility is robotics, right? So the robotics team went to Louisville and were reasonably successful. They were 6, 3, and 1. They didn't stand on the podium at the end, but they did very well, and they felt they
fantastic.
had a very representative performance for themselves. So that was a good thing, and that's our 3rd year now in a row to going to the World. So I think they deserve some credit for that.
Indeed. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please make a note that Mr. Lippert has used his time for next week as well, please. And speaking of next week, the agenda says we're meeting on May 6th. We're actually meeting on May 4th next week at 6 p.m. Some of us are meeting next Thursday at 6 p.m. Notice the start time is 6. And
Oh, I do have something.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Okay. On May 16th is town meeting, and we'll probably be meeting that day, night before town meeting at 6:15 or 6:30, and we will notify you of that as well. And that's it.
I do have one thing you just reminded me. On May 4th, immediately following our meeting, because we're going to have a hard stop-ish right at 7, because
I have to go to the event to honor the teachers who are
right.
retiring.
So, and I would invite people who are watching to come out, or the people who are in the audience, Mr. Limpert, to come across the street to the middle school cafeteria, because we're having the public meeting about the middle school fields project. So it'll be it's at 7 in the back cafeteria. It's called Cafeteria B, which I just discovered. That's the one in the back, closer to the fields. And we would love people to come out and see and give input.
May 4th.
Correct. Immediately following this, you can jog across the street.
And Madam Clerk, please note that Ms. Mably used up her time for next week as well.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn now. Moved by Mr. McDevitt, second by by Ms. Lynch. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.